All right, here we are with topic 1, Hitler's rise and the Holocaust. Now, we're going to spend the first week of the World War I unit looking at a really interesting article, The Boys Who Fought the Nazis.
Is it
right?
World War II?
It's what did I say, World War I?
Yes.
No. Yes, World War II.
World War II.
And I know how much you guys complain about English and social studies and English, so to show you how much they actually combine, Mrs. Elston's doing this video with us because it does tie into what you're going to be doing in English. So take a second and say hi to Mrs. Elston.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so first we have to look at how Hitler himself comes to power, right? And believe it or not, well, let me backtrack, I got way ahead of myself. So I threw this picture in, right, because unlike World War I, where the blame could be placed at a bunch of different people and hundreds of years of just fighting, right, World War II is totally different. You can lay the blame on the footstep of one person, and Adolf Hitler is that one person, right? So he actually takes office. He gets elected as chancellor, which is kind of similar to prime minister. So he gets elected legally, right? And then he just, uses his office, abuses his power, and takes complete control, right? He uses a couple different techniques to solidify his role, right? Propaganda is a biggie. We've talked about that and a number of different things. This poster would be an example. Okay, it's any kind of media to try and get people to feel or think a particular way. Right? And then the other biggie is the use of fear. Right? Now, in the story you're going to be looking at with Miss Elston, you're definitely going to start touching off on Adolf Hitler using fear. He actually used what was known as the Gestapo, which was his secret police. But this type of political thought is known as fascism, right? Where you have power in the hands of one person, right, with a strong sense of nationalism, and he basically convinced the German people that he was going to rebuild that into a major world power again. 1936, he forms the Rome-Berlin axis, which is over here, right? That is going to be with Italy, right? And this is right here, Benito Mussolini, who's pretty much doing the same thing in Italy with dreams of rebuilding the Roman Empire. Right? And now we get back into rebuilding himself after the war. Is we know that Germany had a lot of land taken after World War I, thanks to the Treaty of Versailles. We know that the treaty is going to punish the Germans, right, for starting World War I, even though they didn't. Right, so here's kind of the timeline, and there was a better map in there at the beginning. Obviously, Mrs. Elston is like sleeping like you guys do right now, because now it's like pure social studies and pure maps, right? But the first thing that he does, Mrs. Elston.
Well, I have to interject here because I got cut off earlier. I wanted to talk about where Anne Frank's family was living and where they had to move.
So Anne Frank is the story they're doing. We definitely left that out. The Diary of Anne Frank.
Oh, I thought you mentioned that.
No, I mentioned my story. So where is Anne Frank located?
Okay, so Anne Frank is living in Germany at the beginning of our story. When she begins her diary, she is living in Germany. Okay, so Hitler rises to power in 1933, as you had mentioned. Okay, and Anne's father, Otto, starts to become a little nervous about this. So shortly thereafter, Otto Frank relocates his family to Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Yes, there we go, perfect. Okay, in hopes that he will keep his family safe. And of course, we find out that that is shortly lived.
All right, because when it's going to be in a couple of slides, if we start looking at the Nazi Party, right, singling out who they feel is to blame, and he starts using his racism ideas, racist ideas, right, the reach of the Nazis is going to extend out of Germany into all these surrounding areas. But if we look at the land acquisitions, the first thing Adolf Hitler does is he sends troops into an area known as the Rhineland, which is this little pink area here. It's part of Germany, but France wanted a little bit of protection, so they basically told Germany, you can't send troops there anymore. So that's the first thing Hitler does. He doesn't care what anybody had to say. He went and did it. The second thing is he takes control of Austria. Right, he annexes Austria. Right, they actually welcome the Germans in. They have big giant parades, so that actually worked out well for the Austrians at first. Right, and then he sets his sights on the Sudetenland, which is this orange area. Now the people living there are German-speaking. What used to be part of Germany, he wants to take that as Germany. But at this point, the rest of the world is on the lookout. They see what Hitler's trying to do. They don't like that he's disrespecting the Treaty of Versailles, Right? So British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain meets with Adolf Hitler and pretty much says to him, look, you can't take any more land. And Hitler says, I only want the Sudetenland, and then I'm done. So if you can picture, Mrs. Elson, a rabid dog chasing after you and it wants to bite your paw, can you think of something you would do to try and keep the dog from attacking you? Could you throw the dog something?
A bone.
You could throw the dog a bone, right, to keep it from eating you. So basically what Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain does is... A steak? I used steak earlier, yeah, last couple of years. But he basically says to Adolf Hitler, we will give you the Sudetenland if you promise not to take any more land. Hitler says, absolutely, I will do that. And that's known as the Munich Agreement, Munich being a city in Germany, right? But unfortunately for the rest of the world, Adolf Hitler had his fingers crossed behind his back, and he ends up sending troops and taking the rest of Czechoslovakia, all right?
What if the dog was chasing us, Mr. Ross? Would you sacrifice me?
I don't know.
Would you throw Elston?
I'm faster than you.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, you.
I just think that's
I have walked
an official challenge, folks.
I used to walk with her at lunch, and I couldn't keep up with her that one year. Remember, I walked with you once around town?
Yeah, but that's walking, so you might have me in the running.
No.
I don't know.
All right, now we get into what truly is one of the saddest parts of World War II, and I know you talked about it in 7th grade. I know you went to the Holocaust Museum in 7th grade as well, right? But basically, you know, point blank, Hitler was a racist in any sense of the word, right? He felt that there was a master race of Germans that were better than everybody else in the world. So he set about trying to remove anybody from Germany that was not part of this master Aryan race.
And this is a big concern in the Frank family because Margot, Anne Frank's older sister, receives a letter to report to a work camp, which Mr. Ross will be talking about in a moment.
Okay. So when we talked about the Treaty of Versailles, the German people were very angry, and Hitler actually convinced them that it was because of the Jews. So they kind of like directed their unhappiness and their anger towards the members of the Jewish race. November 9th to 10th, we had a night called, it was referred to as Kristallnacht, which is the Night of Broken Glass, where there's just tremendous violence and terror all throughout the major cities in Germany, and it was definitely targeted at the Jews, or towards the Jews, right? But Miss Elston was just talking to you about work camps, right? That's how it originally starts. Hitler ships out all the people he deems undesirable to these work camps, right? Some of them are going to be killed from starvation, exhaustion, overwork, right? And then eventually Hitler is not satisfied with the results, right? And this is where we get concentration camps, where he then just simply cuts right down to the murder, right? And the destruction of these undesirables through gas chambers, crematoriums, things like that, right? So as we start to expand, oh, sorry, we had another map there. So let me just jump back to this map here that we were talking about. Right, so as Nazi Germany starts to expand, here would be the Netherlands, where the Anne Frank party leaves. Right, but when we start looking at World War II, right, Germany is going to expand and conquer all the surrounding areas.
And look at that big gray area to the right here, Poland. That's very important in the next slide, I'm sure. I'm assuming. I didn't see the next slide, but I am assuming Poland is going to be very important.
We didn't get to...
Right, it's 1939.
Yeah, well, that was the one I did here. I don't get into the battle yet. No.
Okay, so I'm ahead of Mr. Ross.
Slow down.
Okay, it's very rare because Mr. Ross is usually ahead of me because we're still doing Out of the Dust.
All right, so we're gonna have a week of the boys who fought the Nazis, which is a sad story, but it is a true story. All right, the boys actually do engage in some espionage to try and stop the Nazis, and then you're going to jump into Anne Frank, and then once again, social studies and English are together again. So you can start the eye rolling, you can start the complaining, the whole nine. Anything else to add before we stop?
So exciting!
All right, we're done. Time we would